Something extraordinary is beginning to move beneath the surface of ordinary life, and the vast majority of people have no idea it is happening. While attention remains fixed on schedules, obligations, headlines, and distractions, a rare astrological event is quietly taking its place in the sky, preparing to influence the collective for years to come. What unfolds today is not a passing transit, not a brief energetic fluctuation that appears and disappears within days. This is the start of a cycle that has not occurred in more than 42 years. On June 19th, Chiron, known throughout astrology as the wounded healer, steps into Taurus. The moment this transition becomes official, a hidden doorway begins to open within you. It is connected to your relationship with resources, your physical existence, your personal value, and the foundation upon which your sense of security has been built. At first, it may feel uncomfortable. It may feel as though something buried for decades is being disturbed. Yet this process is not arriving to punish you. It is arriving because a deeper freedom can no longer be postponed. The challenge is that many people will misunderstand what is actually taking place. They will assume this is merely a story about income, possessions, or financial circumstances. In reality, the roots reach much deeper. Chiron entering Taurus awakens an ancient wound that has become so intertwined with your identity that it no longer feels like a wound at all. It feels normal. It feels familiar. It feels like who you are. Over the course of your life, decisions have been made around it. Careers have been chosen because of it. Relationships have been shaped by it. Entire patterns of behavior have developed around its influence. Beginning today, the universe starts placing a mirror directly in front of that hidden pattern, asking you to see what has been operating behind the scenes all along. Perhaps you've already noticed signs that something unusual is happening. Maybe your body has felt heavier than normal. Maybe you wake up tired even after adequate rest. Maybe there is a strange fatigue that cannot be explained logically, a sensation that reaches deeper than muscles and settles into the structure of your being itself. It can feel as though your bones are carrying a weight your conscious mind cannot identify. If that experience sounds familiar, pay attention, because there is a specific reason this energy is surfacing now, and understanding it requires seeing the larger picture unfolding around this moment. Nothing about this timing is accidental. The universe did not randomly select this week. Every piece of the cosmic landscape has been moving toward this point for weeks, creating pressure, preparing conditions, and setting the stage for what is now beginning. June of 2026 is not an ordinary chapter in the astrological calendar. It stands out as one of the most concentrated and significant energetic periods in recent years. Event after event has been stacking upon the next, building momentum toward what occurs today. The sequence began gently. Earlier in the month, Venus and Jupiter united in Cancer, creating an atmosphere that felt nurturing, protective, and emotionally reassuring. Many people experienced a brief sense of comfort, as though life had softened its grip for a moment. There was space to breathe. There was room to feel supported. It resembled a pause before a much larger transformation. Yet that calm did not last indefinitely. Only days later, Venus formed a square with Chiron. For some, the effect arrived as a sudden emotional sting. A conversation about finances may have struck a nerve. Looking at the bank account may have triggered unexpected anxiety. A comment from another person may have left you feeling diminished, overlooked, or somehow less than enough. Whatever form it took, the experience was not random. It served a purpose. It was the first glimpse behind the curtain. It was the universe revealing the location of the wound before initiating a far deeper healing process. Then comes today. At 5:20, Chiron officially enters Taurus, and the true work begins. Yet even that is only one part of a much larger chain reaction. Less than 12 hours afterward, Uranus forms an exact square to the lunar nodes. Within modern astrology, this alignment is associated with disruption, unpredictability, and sudden redirection. Systems that appear stable can reveal weaknesses. Financial structures can experience unexpected pressure. Trade patterns can shift. Technology can malfunction in ways that expose vulnerabilities hidden beneath the surface. The message is unmistakable. What appears solid is not always secure. What seems permanent may require transformation. As if that were not enough, the summer solstice arrives on June 21st. Immediately afterward, the sun forms a sextile to Chiron. Imagine a powerful light being switched on inside a dark room. Areas that were previously ignored become impossible to miss. Cracks in the foundation reveal themselves with startling clarity. By the time the month reaches its final stretch, Mercury begins its retrograde journey in Cancer. Jupiter enters Leo, and a full moon in Capricorn demands honesty regarding the distance between emotional needs and external expectations. Suddenly, the tension between what your heart longs for and what the world expects you to deliver becomes impossible to avoid. Seen together, these events form something much larger than a simple transit. This is a profound period of reckoning, carefully orchestrated through a sequence of cosmic movements that have been unfolding with remarkable precision. And once you recognize the scale of what is taking place, the deeper meaning of Chiron in Taurus becomes impossible to ignore. The wound now being activated is not necessarily about lacking money. In fact, many people carrying this wound have achieved success, accumulated resources, and built stable lives. The issue is far more subtle. It lives inside the belief that your worth must constantly be proven. It hides within the fear that if you stop achieving, stop producing, stop serving a purpose for someone else, your value will disappear. It is the inner pressure that makes rest feel uncomfortable. It is the guilt that appears when you spend money on yourself. It is the invisible force that keeps you trapped in situations that drain your spirit, because security feels safer than freedom. This wound whispers that survival depends on performance. It convinces you that existence itself must be earned. And as Chiron begins its long journey through Taurus, that belief is being brought into the light so it can finally be seen for what it has always been: a story you learned long ago. A story that shaped your life in ways you never fully realized, and a story that the universe is now asking you to confront before the next stage of this transformation can unfold. What makes this period so powerful is that the pain now coming to the surface was never created by you alone. Long before you arrived here, long before you formed your first memories, generations before you were already carrying stories about survival, families endured wars, economic collapse, shortages, uncertainty, and hardship. They learned to associate security with holding tightly to whatever they had. They learned that affection often came attached to expectations, sacrifices, and conditions. Those lessons traveled silently through family lines until they eventually reached you. Before you were old enough to understand language, before you could explain your feelings, you were already absorbing beliefs about scarcity, value, and what it takes to deserve safety. That invisible inheritance has been shaping your choices for years. The remarkable thing is that many people do not even realize they are operating from these old programs because they have become part of everyday life. Yet today, the cosmic focus begins shifting toward those hidden foundations. For the past 8 years, Chiron has moved through Aries, directing humanity into a long confrontation with identity itself. Throughout that cycle, individuals across the world have wrestled with questions about who they are, where they belong, what they believe, and whether they have the right to fully express themselves. The collective atmosphere often felt combative, intense, and emotionally draining. Political conflicts intensified, social divisions widened. Personal struggles around confidence and self-definition became impossible to ignore. It was as though everyone was fighting a battle to establish their place in the world. The pressure rarely seemed to let up. Just when one lesson appeared complete, another challenge emerged. Now that chapter reaches its conclusion, yet the ending of one struggle marks the beginning of another. The energy ahead carries a very different texture. Aries brought a fast-moving fire. Taurus works more slowly. It moves beneath the surface. It settles into the physical body. It appears in subtle ways, through sensations, habits, and emotional reactions that seem small until you realize how deeply rooted they are. It can emerge when you examine your finances and immediately feel tension. It can appear when you look at your reflection and focus only on perceived flaws. It can surface when you compare yourself to others and quietly conclude that you are somehow lacking. Chiron in Taurus illuminates the place where material value and personal value have become entangled. It reveals the unconscious tendency to measure human worth through external standards. And unlike a brief transit that touches the wound and moves on, this influence remains for 7 years, creating enough time for genuine transformation to occur. The purpose is not punishment. The purpose is healing that cannot be avoided any longer. For some signs, however, this experience arrives with even greater intensity. While everyone will notice the shift, there are specific individuals who will feel the restructuring process reshape the architecture of their lives in unmistakable ways. Aries, this begins with you. If your sun or rising sign falls in Aries, a significant chapter is finally closing. For nearly 8 years, Chiron has occupied your first house, the realm connected to identity, physical presence, confidence, and the fundamental experience of being yourself. The lessons have not been gentle. There have been moments when you questioned your appearance, your direction, your leadership abilities, and even your right to take up space exactly as you are. Many times you believed a healing process had finally completed, only to discover another layer underneath, waiting to be addressed. It may have felt as though life repeatedly placed you in situations designed to test your sense of self. The pressure seemed endless. Beginning today, that focus changes. Chiron leaves Aries and enters your second house, the domain associated with finances, resources, possessions, income, and self-worth. This transition matters because it redirects the healing process toward an entirely different area of life. Deep within your conditioning exists a belief that value must be earned through struggle. You may have learned that success requires constant effort, relentless pushing, and endless proof of competence. Somewhere along the way, hard work became connected to deservingness. Rest started to feel uncomfortable. Ease felt suspicious. Receiving became harder than giving. As Chiron begins moving through your second house, these assumptions are brought into full awareness. Situations where you consistently undervalue yourself will become increasingly obvious. You may recognize professional environments where your contributions far exceed your compensation. You may see relationship dynamics where your emotional investment greatly outweighs what is returned. You may even notice financial patterns that quietly sabotage stability because part of you unconsciously believes abundance is not meant to remain. Over the next 7 years, a new understanding gradually replaces those beliefs. The lesson is profound. Your worth does not increase through exhaustion. Your value does not depend on how much suffering you endure. As that realization strengthens, external circumstances begin reflecting the internal shift. Opportunities become easier to recognize. Resources remain instead of disappearing. Financial growth becomes more sustainable. Not because fate suddenly changed its mind, but because the barriers that once blocked receiving have begun dissolving. The fighter who spent years proving value eventually discovers that true value never required proof in the first place. And as that awareness deepens, a completely different relationship with prosperity becomes possible. Taurus, your experience is even more intimate because Chiron is entering your first house directly. There is no separation between this transit and your personal reality. The energy arrives at the center of your identity, your body, your presence, and the way you experience yourself. This is not a distant lesson happening somewhere outside your life. It is arriving at your front door. Yet before understanding where this path leads, it is important to recognize everything you have already endured. Since 2018, Uranus has been traveling through Taurus, disrupting what once seemed permanent. The past several years may have felt like standing in the middle of a storm, while familiar structures collapsed around you. Areas of life that once felt predictable became uncertain. Relationships shifted unexpectedly. Career paths changed direction. Even your understanding of who you are may have transformed repeatedly. Stability, something Taurus naturally values, has often felt difficult to maintain. Again and again, circumstances demanded adaptation. Again and again, life challenged attachments that once appeared secure. The process has been uncomfortable, but it has also been preparing the ground for what comes next. Because now that Uranus has spent years breaking apart outdated foundations, Chiron arrives to reveal why those foundations needed to change in the first place, and that realization marks the beginning of an entirely new phase of the journey. For a sign that naturally seeks permanence, predictability, and solid ground beneath its feet, the last several years have likely felt like standing in the middle of an earthquake that refused to stop. Everything that once seemed dependable has been challenged. Every familiar structure has been tested. Yet now, as one phase of disruption begins to settle, another influence arrives with a very different purpose. The storm that dismantled what could no longer remain standing is giving way to a deeper process of restoration. Chiron does not arrive to create more chaos. It arrives to examine what the chaos revealed. It arrives to help heal what the upheaval exposed. For Taurus, the deepest lesson of this transit centers on a truth that has quietly shaped life for far longer than most realize. Throughout your journey, you have often become the person others lean on. The dependable one. The steady presence. The individual everyone trusts when circumstances become difficult. People come to you when they need support, guidance, reassurance, or strength. Over time, this role may have become so familiar that it began to define your identity. Yet beneath that reliability, there is often a hidden cost. Somewhere along the way, a belief may have formed that your importance depends on how much you can carry, that your value is tied to how much you provide, that if you stop being the anchor, the caretaker, the stabilizing force, you risk losing connection, approval, or love. This is the place Chiron is now illuminating. The wound is not simply about responsibility. The wound is the fear that, without responsibility, you might no longer matter. As this transit unfolds over the next 7 years, that belief becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. Life begins presenting opportunities to ask a question that can feel deeply uncomfortable. If you're not constantly supporting everyone else, who are you? If your identity is no longer built around holding everything together, what remains? If you stop proving your worth through endurance, what truth emerges underneath? These questions may initially create resistance because they challenge a role that has felt necessary for so long. Yet they are also the doorway to profound healing. And this brings us back to the physical heaviness many people have been feeling. The exhaustion that seems disproportionate to daily activities, the tension that settles into the shoulders, the neck, the jaw, the joints, the fatigue that lingers even after rest. For many Taurus individuals, the body has been communicating long before the conscious mind was ready to listen. Years of carrying emotional weight, financial pressure, responsibility for others, and the expectation of constant strength have accumulated within the nervous system itself. The body remembers what the mind attempts to push aside. It stores burdens that have never been fully released. Chiron entering your first house invites a completely different relationship with yourself. It asks you to stop treating your body as a tool designed solely for productivity and survival. It asks you to remember that your physical existence is sacred, that your body is not a machine built to endlessly perform. It is a home meant to support life, pleasure, presence, and genuine well-being. As you begin releasing the belief that worth must be earned through sacrifice, something remarkable starts to happen. The security you spent years creating for others begins returning to you. The respect you extended outward begins reflecting back. The stability you fought to maintain finally becomes something you experience internally, rather than something you constantly manufacture for everyone around you. Gradually, you realize that rest was never a privilege you had to deserve. It was always your birthright. And as this understanding deepens, an entirely new foundation begins forming beneath your life. Libra. Your journey through this transit moves into a different territory altogether, one that touches some of the most complex and emotionally charged areas of human experience. With Chiron entering your 8th house, the spotlight turns toward themes involving shared finances, joint resources, obligations, inheritances, debts, taxes, and every situation where money becomes intertwined with another person's choices. Yet the financial layer is only the surface. Beneath it lies a far deeper story about power, trust, vulnerability, and the compromises you have made in order to maintain harmony. Libra naturally seeks balance. You are often gifted at understanding multiple perspectives, creating peace, and avoiding unnecessary conflict. But there are times when that gift carries a hidden price. Consider how often you may have chosen agreement over confrontation. How many situations required you to stay silent about financial concerns because speaking up felt too disruptive? How many times did you accept conditions that were not entirely fair because preserving the relationship seemed more important than protecting your own interests? These experiences leave traces. They become patterns. And over time, those patterns create wounds that are easy to overlook because they hide beneath politeness, diplomacy, and grace. Yet Chiron entering the 8th house has no interest in allowing those patterns to remain hidden. Over the next 7 years, situations involving shared resources are likely to reveal deeper truths about your relationship with power and self-worth. Old memories may return. Agreements that once seemed acceptable may suddenly feel unbalanced. Financial arrangements may require re-evaluation. Conversations postponed for years may finally demand attention. Whether through partnerships, business matters, inheritances, debts, or other shared responsibilities, life begins exposing areas where your desire for peace came at the expense of your own sovereignty. This process may feel uncomfortable because it requires honesty where avoidance once felt safer. It requires boundaries where accommodation became habitual. Yet within this challenge exists the greatest gift of the transit. Chiron is not simply exposing what hurt you, it is teaching you something transformative about partnership itself. Genuine connection does not require self-sacrifice. Love does not demand the surrender of personal authority. Generosity does not mean tolerating exploitation. Cooperation does not require abandoning your own needs. These lessons may arrive gradually, but they have the power to reshape every important relationship in your life. As your understanding evolves, you begin recognizing the difference between healthy compromise and losing yourself for the sake of keeping others comfortable. That distinction changes everything. Over time, stronger boundaries emerge. Confidence grows. Financial decisions become clearer. Shared resources begin operating from a foundation of mutual respect rather than hidden imbalance. And as those changes take root, something extraordinary unfolds. The areas of life that once generated stress, uncertainty, or resentment begin transforming into sources of genuine support. The people who enter your world are increasingly aligned with reciprocity and fairness. Business partnerships become more balanced. Romantic relationships become more equal. You attract individuals who recognize your value without requiring you to diminish yourself. They understand that true partnership is not about one person carrying the burden while the other benefits. It is about two people standing side by side, honoring one another fully. And that realization becomes one of the most powerful gifts this transit has to offer as the journey continues forward. What emerges after these old patterns begin dissolving is not loss. It is not deprivation. It is not the emptiness many people fear when they imagine releasing something familiar. What remains is space. Space to breathe differently, to live differently, and to experience a level of freedom that may have felt unreachable for much of your life. For some, that freedom appears through finances. For others, it appears emotionally. For many, it arrives as a profound spiritual liberation. Yet regardless of how it manifests, the destination is the same. The structures that once kept you trapped begin loosening their grip, revealing a version of yourself that has existed beneath the conditioning all along. This is why the signals coming from your body deserve attention right now. What is unfolding through Chiron's movement into Taurus is not limited to thoughts, beliefs, or emotional patterns. The process extends into the physical realm. Taurus has long been associated with the body, the throat, the neck, and the deep connection between physical safety and nervous system regulation. If you have recently experienced symptoms that seem difficult to explain, there may be more occurring beneath the surface than you realize. Perhaps you have felt persistently drained despite getting adequate rest. Perhaps tension has settled into your throat, creating the sensation that important truths remain unspoken. Maybe your shoulders carry a heaviness that stretching cannot fully release. Perhaps your relationship with nourishment has become complicated, swinging between excess, restriction, or guilt around receiving what your body genuinely needs. These experiences may appear unrelated, yet they often point toward the same underlying reality. Your body frequently understands change before your conscious mind can articulate it. Long before awareness arrives, the nervous system begins responding. Long before beliefs shift, the body starts signaling where imbalance exists. For many people, these physical sensations are evidence that an old survival strategy has reached its limit. The constant striving, the endless productivity, the belief that rest must be earned, the habit of pushing beyond healthy limits simply to feel secure. None of it can continue indefinitely without consequences. In many ways, Chiron entering Taurus represents the intervention your body has been requesting for years. The healing ahead is not only about changing your relationship with money or self-worth. It is about returning to yourself. It is about reconnecting with your physical existence in a way that many people have forgotten is possible. Instead of viewing the body as a tool whose purpose is endless output, this transit encourages a completely different perspective. Your body becomes something worthy of reverence, a living environment that deserves care, a sacred space deserving nourishment, pleasure, recovery, comfort, and respect. This distinction matters because the deepest transformation of the coming years may not be visible on a financial statement. It may not immediately appear in external achievements. Many individuals will focus primarily on money because money is measurable. It provides visible evidence of change. Yet the more profound shift happens internally. The moment you begin feeling safe within yourself, everything else starts reorganizing around that foundation. When your nervous system no longer lives in a constant state of alertness, opportunities are approached differently. Decisions are made differently. Relationships function differently. When you stop treating your body like a machine and begin honoring it as something sacred, abundance starts flowing through a completely different channel. Security no longer comes solely from external circumstances. It begins growing from within. And from that place, material stability often follows naturally. The resources follow the sense of safety. The prosperity follows the restoration of inner trust. In many ways, that pattern has always existed, even if few people recognize it. This is also why the larger historical significance of this transit deserves attention. What is occurring now extends beyond individual experiences. The last time Chiron traveled through Taurus was from 1976 through 1984. During that period, the world experienced profound challenges surrounding resources, economic certainty, labor, and material security. Stagflation reshaped financial realities. Energy crises altered public confidence. Existing assumptions about economic stability were forced into question. The incident at 3 Mile Island changed perceptions regarding energy infrastructure. Global agricultural initiatives emerged in response to concerns surrounding food security. The relationship between labor and capital entered a period of significant renegotiation. The collective was compelled to reconsider what genuine stability actually meant. Looking further back, Chiron's previous passage through Taurus between 1926 and 1934 coincided with another transformative chapter. The optimism and expansion of the Roaring Twenties eventually collided with economic reality. The stock market collapse of 1929 occurred while Chiron occupied 12 degrees Taurus, in exact conjunction with the North Node of Destiny. Speculation encountered consequence. Illusion met tangible reality. Humanity found itself confronting difficult questions regarding value, security, and sustainability. Those years forced a re-evaluation of assumptions that many believed could never be challenged. Now, in 2026, Chiron enters Taurus, following 8 years of Uranus reshaping financial and material systems across the globe. During Uranus's stay in Taurus, countless structures experienced disruption. Decentralized currencies emerged and evolved. Real estate markets experienced volatility. Supply chains revealed vulnerabilities. Speculative markets surged and declined. Established systems faced unprecedented challenges. Uranus served as the force of disruption, exposing weaknesses and breaking apart outdated frameworks. Chiron now arrives with a different mission. Rather than dismantling, it seeks restoration. Rather than exposing fractures alone, it seeks healing. The collective question being asked is both ancient and deeply personal. What is the true measure of value? What determines worth? For centuries, humanity has attempted to answer those questions through wealth, productivity, status, possessions, and achievement. Yet Chiron in Taurus suggests a different answer. It points toward a value that exists independently of external proof, a worth that cannot be increased or decreased by market conditions, social approval, relationships, or material circumstances. But reaching that realization requires courage. It requires acknowledging the wound before healing can occur. It requires sitting with discomfort long enough to understand what it has been trying to teach. It requires allowing outdated beliefs to dissolve so something more authentic can emerge in their place. This is why the years ahead matter so deeply. They are not designed to be comfortable. Chiron rarely chooses the easiest path, yet it consistently offers something more meaningful than comfort. It offers truth, the kind of healing that remains intact when circumstances change, the kind of transformation that survives uncertainty, the kind of inner stability that does not disappear when external structures shift. For Aries, this chapter invites a release from the belief that value must always be earned through struggle. For Taurus, it offers the opportunity to set down burdens that were never meant to be carried forever and rediscover identity beyond responsibility. For Libra, it opens the door to freedom from financial and emotional entanglements that demanded too much and returned too little. And for every other sign, Chiron begins activating a unique area of life, revealing a specific wound, while simultaneously offering a path toward genuine healing. No one moves through this transit unchanged, yet awareness transforms the experience. The wound itself becomes the doorway. It becomes the place where wisdom emerges. It becomes the threshold between an old version of life and a new one. That has always been the deeper purpose of Chiron. And beginning today, That doorway stands open wider than it has in decades. Thank you for spending this time here and sharing this journey. If this message resonated with you, and you would like to continue exploring these powerful astrological shifts together, consider subscribing and becoming part of this growing community. Your support means more than you know. I would also love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments. Until our next conversation, take good care of yourself. Stay aware of the changes unfolding around and within you, and remember to subscribe for more insights as this remarkable journey continues.